and welcome to the NewsOK Varsity podcast. We're here to talk some high school football playoffs once again this week. I'm Scott Wright of the Oklahoman, joined by Jacob Unruh. Trent shaded out sick today, or at least maybe just pretending to be sick, and he's doing some Cyber Tuesday shopping. I don't know.
Yeah, you never know.
But it's playoff week, and if you've been paying attention to the Douglass-Locust Grove stuff, you might have forgotten that there's other games going on this week. We'll get to the big Douglass-Locust Grove controversy in just a little while, but let's talk some actual football that's going to be on the field for sure on Friday and Saturday night. So we got in the big school realm, we've got 4 championship games, including the first ever 6A2 championship game. But let's start with Class 4A, a class that surprisingly ended up being all Eastside teams on the bracket in the semifinals. We had some West Siders that looked like they could make a run, and it didn't work out. Wagner and Oologah, a rematch of a regular season district game that was won by one team and shows a win for the other in the win column. Oologah won the game on the field, and then this is one of the games that they had to forfeit because of their use of an ineligible player. I mean, both of these teams are playing incredibly well right now. Wagner started the season really rough. You know, I had them up high in the preseason rankings. They start 1-3 and really fell off the radar quick with a couple of ugly losses early in the season there. But now they're playing really well. Oologah is on a roll. They've been, they were a top 5 team even before the playoffs began. So, just an intriguing matchup, isn't it, Jacob?
Yeah, I think so. I think the rematch factor is really intriguing, but what stands out to me is here's a team, Oologah, that has to forfeit these games, that has to, the last second, change their opponent. Well, Wagner did too, but right. You change around, the entire bracket flips, and you still get through it.
Yeah.
And they took down Fort Gibson in the process,
exactly.
Which you thought once Anadarko was out, Fort Gibson became the favorite. And I think for really not just Oologah, but I guess when you think about Wagner doing the same thing too, that the brackets change on them, the matchups change,
right? And
none of the teams let them affect them, and that's what really stands out to me. And I think it could come down to this could be a really close game.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a phenomenal football game. Like we said, the first one Oologah won and then had to forfeit it. Wagner has just been on a tear. They took down a good Metro Christian team that had just come off a big win over Anadarko, 21-14. Oologah survived a really close ball game against Fort Gibson. This game is scheduled for Friday night at 7:00 at Broken Arrow High School. Like we said, it was all Eastside teams in the 4A semifinals. Wagner, I give slight edge because they're a program that's a little bit more used to being in this situation, I think, than Oologah. Coach Craig doing a great job at Oologah. They've got a really solid program, a regular team in the playoffs. But Wagner has been in a lot of title games recently. Dale Condit, a phenomenal coach, and they've obviously turned their season around and are playing really well. So we'll see what happens there. But definitely an intriguing matchup there. We go move on to 5A. Just a fascinating class, I think, from start to finish when you look at the playoffs of this bracket. And we've got now Skiatook and Lawton MacArthur. Really, the 2 teams that came out of complete toss-up semifinal games. I think if we were sitting here talking about this being an Ardmore-McAllister final, nobody would be any more surprised than they are now. It was just such a unique and interesting bracket. MacArthur survives that wild 50-49 overtime game against McAllister, where they score in the final minute to tie the game with a 2-point conversion, and then win it in overtime. Just sounds like one of the games of the year as far as the high school season. So and then Skiatook, which is taking down some big teams throughout the course of the year, but definitely here in the playoffs. You look at wins over Guthrie and Ardmore in the last 2 weeks. They defeated McAllister earlier in the season, which really kind of lets you know that this team was for real. As you look at this matchup, what stands out?
I think there's a lot of talent in this game. You got Will Collins at quarterback for Lawton Mac and Kyle McLaughlin at running back for Skiatook, and they're 2 of the guys that kind of lead the way statistically through a lot of categories across the state, and it'll be interesting to see what they do. But I think MacArthur really stands out to me in this regard. look at their playoffs. They had a 2-point win against Carl Albert. They had to rally in the final minute against McAllister. And they blew out Collinsville. But this is the mark of a team that I think has been there before, to be able to get these close wins against really good teams. Carl Albert didn't have quite the same season, but that's a tough playoff team.
Yeah.
Skiatook, it's great that they turned it around from 2 years ago when they were 0-10, and I think that is the story of the week right there. You've got an 0-10 team 2 years ago that here they are playing a team, but this really kind of, to me, feels like it's Lawton MacArthur's year, and it has been. I've said that since day one.
Yeah, and at the same time, Skiatook is a team that just keeps exceeding expectations, and so I mean they're going to be right there in the mix of this. But yeah, we've been saying a lot this year throughout the course of the year that a lot of people seem to think that Lawton Mac is the most talented team in this class, and they'll get their chance to prove it here. The title game has not gone their way their last few few visits, so we'll see what happens there. That game is the only Saturday night game on the schedule this week.
We'll both be there.
That's right, out at UConn, right over in my backyard. So I'll be able to swing by over there and check out a heck of a ball game. You'll be there as well. So I'm really looking forward to that matchup.
And we got to clarify something from last week's podcast. It is Skiatook or Skiatook. I've confirmed with my college roommate who's from there.
I'm still not. That does not carry enough weight for me to stop calling it Skiatook. That's all I'm saying.
I call it Skiatook.
I'm still putting it up for a vote of the people, and not necessarily just the people of Skiatook. But anyways, as we move to the 6A2 title matchup that's coming up, it's really interesting coming off of just talking about this game because it's another Lawton team that was expected in some respects to be here at this point against another team that's really exceeding expectations. Now, Bixby didn't come from being 0-10 2 years ago, and they didn't come from being number 20 in our preseason poll to get to this point, but this was looked at as a three-team race from the beginning of the season, and Bixby was in that second tier of maybe three other teams that had that we thought maybe had a shot, 3 or 4 other teams that had a shot to maybe get a semifinal spot, and Bixby has just, like Skiatook, continued to exceed expectations. They're a high-powered offense, obviously having a great year on the offensive side of the ball. I'm curious how they're going to do against a team like Lawton that has so much size up front and speed on the back end on defense, and the ability to really control the ball and keep their offense keep the Bixby offense off of the field. So we'll see how that goes. I think that Booker T is close to that type of team, but not quite there. And obviously Bixby was able to defeat Booker T, but I think that Lawton is a different kind of matchup for them.
Yeah, as like Randy Breeze told me 2 weeks ago when they played Tulsa, Washington, he wants to pound the ball. He wants to wear him down up front. That's going to be the game plan here. And I from seeing Booker T, Midwest City, and Lawton, now all three of them this season, no one matches that offensive line up front. I mean, Jalen Barnett leads the way, and the perfect example is when he's running alongside Daryl Patterson on a touchdown in the second half a couple weeks ago. And I mean, he's right beside him. They're neck and neck, and it's almost like he was trying to beat Daryl to the end zone himself and keep blocking, but there's no one to block. And so it was just running down there and maybe a block here and there, and that was impressive. And I think that's what is going to separate them, along with Daryl Patterson's incredible speed. And I really was impressed with Jack Meservey at quarterback. He's kind of gone under the radar throughout the year, but the way he played, especially in that second half, throwing the ball, he came out, they threw the ball 4 or 5 straight plays to start the half and really kind of mix up what Booker T was trying to do, is trying to stack the box on Patterson. And if they can do that again, Bixby's going to have their hands full.
Yeah, he's absolutely been a crucial part of this team's success. The thing everybody talks about Patterson's speed, which is ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
The only time I've seen him live this year was against Midwest City, a team that can match up with what Lawton has up front, and they pounded the ball with Patterson into that Midwest City defensive front. Patterson took a beating, carried the ball 40 times, and really held up to it, which was very impressive to me, especially when I got down on the field and interviewed him after the game and saw how skinny a dude he really is. I mean, he's about 6 feet tall and weighs around 165 pounds. He's not a thick guy, but he took a beating that night and just kept on going, and that's what has really impressed me about him. If he can get everything together, I think that he's a Big 12 caliber player. He's been in our top 10 of our Super 30 most of the year anyway, but and has a ton of offers. So we'll see how that plays out for him. But he is really a difference maker, and it's not just speed with him. I think that could be a huge factor in this game. If he's a big play type of guy.
It's pretty interesting how Lawton a couple years ago goes from having Ivan Thomas playing running back full time, as Randy Breeze like to call him, the biggest running back in America, to Darrell Patterson.
Yeah, exactly. You got a guy that's that went to college as a defensive tackle, was your tailback for a good portion of his career. So pretty interesting twist of fate. And when they get down into the short yardage situations, they put Malik Hanna back there, and he's a bigger guy. He's not huge. He's a linebacker and built like one, but he can go in there and pound for some of that short yardage stuff. I felt bad for Patterson against Midwest City that night because if it was like one of those fantasy football situations where you're watching your guy run for all these yards and then they get down to the one and they hand it to the fullback.
Vulturing him, huh?
Yeah,
he
was vulturing all the touchdowns from Patterson that night. But Hanna is another guy who can pound the ball and gives that offense another weapon. So. And then we didn't even talk about Kalen Sadler on the edge and the things that he can do as a receiver, whether it's throwing the ball down the field or in the screen game, whatever they want to do with him. So
I was impressed with Tristan Gooden.
Yeah,
tight end.
Absolutely.
He was one of the more impressive tight ends I've seen all season. He's big frame. Apparently, he's a better baseball player. And he made some really incredible catches and run some really nice routes the other night.
Yeah, he was the guy who had a bit of a scary injury against Midwest City that night, and we didn't get to see much of him that night. But glad to hear that he's doing well and definitely an impressive looking frame. That brings us to 6A1, the least surprising matchup of the season to this point. Jinx and Union going to do battle for the gold ball in 6A1. One of them will be a champion for the 19th consecutive season, going all the way back to 1995, the last time that someone other than Jinx or Union was the winner of the largest class in the state. So they get to go at it at Chapman Stadium there at Tulsa. You got to anticipate a huge crowd there. It's interesting to look at some of their matchups over the years and how things will flip from the regular season matchup to the championship game. There's been multiple times when the team that wins in the regular season is the one that loses in the championship game. Which way do you see this going, Jacob?
I've always kind of stuck with that trend when I've picked this in the past, and last year I didn't because I thought Jinx was so dominant, and they were. But this time I think it's going to be Jinx again because I think that's the team I've seen improve remarkably throughout the year.
Yeah.
They struggled at the beginning. They were struggling in week 2 when they played Union, and by the time end of the season coming, they were starting to really just dominate everybody. And I think you give Trimble an extra week to prepare, and it really kind of makes things interesting too.
Yeah, absolutely. I do like the idea of the bye week for these guys, for the fact that that it gives kids a chance to get healthy and get their legs under them a little bit, and you're going to get, I think, a better quality game out of these guys. But we'll see how it goes. This being the first year of the bye week, we really don't know how kids are going to react to it. So we'll see. Some of them might have enjoyed Thanksgiving a little too much. Who knows? I know I did, but I don't have to play on Friday, so that's good. You can point to the Jinx Owasso semifinal game as kind of an idea of how much Jinx has turned things around. They blew Owasso out in the semifinals after losing to them 7-6 in week 3, I guess it was, of the regular season. But even then, there's still. You look back at that game, and Jinx was really. It was, I think, a 16-7 game in the third quarter before things started snowballing on Owasso. So maybe, maybe there's not as big a transition as we think. But I really do think Jinx is playing a whole lot better than they were early in the season. I'm still sticking with Union on this one this week, though. I've just been really impressed with the way that they've continued to hold themselves to this high standard. They've been dominant in the playoffs. I saw them against Mustang, a team that they had trouble with in the regular season. Particularly, they had trouble protecting the quarterback, and that got them into a lot of trouble that night. He ended up getting injured and going out of the game, and the backup quarterback had to lead them back to victory in that Week 8 game. They worked on those issues. They had solved them against Mustang for sure when they laid a 52-7 blowout on them in the semifinals. So we'll see. I still think Union wins it, but it's not going to surprise me at all if Jinx comes out on top of this one. All right, we'll move on to our final topic of the day and the big topic of the week. Now, full disclosure here, we're taping this podcast on Tuesday afternoon, and there's a lot that's going to change. If you're listening to this on Friday, there could be a lot of irrelevant news in the next segment of this show. But this is the biggest topic of the week. It has been since Friday night when Douglas had a touchdown taken away incorrectly by an official's call that was misapplied. The touchdown should have counted, which would have given Douglas a 25-20 lead with a minute and 4 seconds left to go against Locust Grove on Friday night in the Class 3A quarterfinals. Instead, the penalty was misapplied, the touchdown taken away. Douglas ends up losing the game 20-19, and Locust Grove advanced to the quarterfinals, where they're originally currently scheduled to play Heritage Hall Friday night at Sapulpa for a spot in the title game. However, we've had protests from Douglas, from the Oklahoma City Public Schools. The initial request denied by the OSSAA. Now it's going to the board of directors on Wednesday. We'll see what happens there. We've also just been alerted to a news conference by State Senator Anastasia Pittman, who represents the area that includes the Douglas community. She's called a press conference for Wednesday morning. There's going to be Willis Alexander is going to be there. It says religious and community leaders, and also representatives of the NAACP. So we'll see what direction that takes this whole debacle that it has become. It's become quite a mess. It's a frustrating thing to see as a sports fan to watch things being battled out this way off the field, isn't it?
Yeah, you always grow up and you play sports and you watch sports and you write about it and things like we do, and you see things like this happen, and people, you use it as a lesson and you move on, and yet it's not happening here. And so watching as Keith Steiner said yesterday, watching the adults handle this yesterday is it's kind of tough to see. You feel for the kids are stuck in limbo. Other teams are stuck in limbo. Locust Grove, Heritage Hall right now. I think they're probably preparing for each other. I don't know, but you've still got to wonder if they're in their head thinking, well, what about Douglas? What's going on here? And it's another just a tough situation. I don't feel like there's any winner in this at all.
There's not. There's really not. There's it's a lose-lose situation all the way around. It's kind of what's going to end up being the lesser of two evils, I think, at the end of this thing. You hate to see it for the kids on both sides, really. You hate to see the Locust Grove kids having to go through this, and especially the Douglas kids. I mean, I remember some games from my youth when I felt like a bad call turned the game around and maybe robbed us of a win. But I was never in a situation where a call where that the officials didn't know how to apply it, took a game away. And it's a completely different circumstance than you really ever see. It's so rare. That's one thing that's been frustrating is people don't really realize how rare an instance this is, because this is not the same as a missed holding call or a missed judgment call. So it's a really rare circumstance, and there's a lot of bitterness, a lot of hurt feelings on both sides, and we'll see how it plays out from this point forward. Like I said, we're taping this on Tuesday afternoon, so a lot's going to change by the time we get to Friday night, when the Locust Grove Heritage Hall game is originally supposed to go. If you had to, let's play the percentage game. If you had to give me a percentage on what chance there is of the Locust Grove Heritage Hall game being played on Friday night at 7 o'clock in Sapulpa, what's your percentage?
Man, I have to go around 25% maybe, and
Yeah.
I feel like I might still be a little high. I just don't have my hopes up in that game being played.
I'm at 10% right now. A 10% chance that game gets played on Friday. I don't, and especially in light of another senator getting involved now, and